Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the second day of the Love Your City Conference 2021. And I'm really excited to have you. You've just walked into a virtual version of a conference that's been going on for half a decade. It's and just heating up. Really hopeful that next year we'll probably be in a hybrid situation. So we'll have leaders here in Atlanta, but we'll still have the opportunity to do what we're doing today, which is connecting across the world, which is great. With that, it is morning here, but it is not morning across the world. And we've got leaders from across the world. So we want to properly welcome everybody across the world that's here with us for the conference. And as I welcome you, would you guys participate? But there's a little chat button that you can click into, whether you're on Facebook Live or here in another format. Just go ahead and as we mention you greet us in whatever way you would greet us in your language or in your culture. So first we want to welcome everyone in Nairobi, Kenya. So that's this afternoon. And so everybody in Kawangware, everybody in Kibera and across Nairobi, we're so glad to have you guys. So come on, get in there. There you go. David's like, hi, David. Yeah, come on, go ahead and greet us. Then next, we want to greet everyone going across Africa to Enugu, Nigeria. Everyone there includes the farm team. All right, so if you're on the farm team, go ahead and say hi. If you're in Udi, go ahead. Thank you, Frank. If you're in Udi, go ahead and jump in there. And then everybody right there in Enugu City, yeah, you guys jump in as well. Great to have everybody in Nigeria and Kenya. Welcome. It's so great to have you guys today. Now we're going to move across the ocean, but we're really staying connected to Nigeria. Hey, hi, Emeka. And we're going to say hello to everybody in Boston, Massachusetts. You know, the leader of the Boy the Ball team there is David Nakdango, who's from Nigeria. So we're moving across the ocean, but staying connected to Nigeria. So everybody in Dorchester, would you guys jump into the chat? Everybody in Arlington, we're so glad for you guys. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be in Boston. So please jump into the chat. Okay, we're going to move a little bit down. We're going to welcome everyone here in Atlanta. And I know there's a lot of participants on Facebook Live today. Please take a moment to just greet us, say hello. It's kind of like the point in the conference where different people are asked to stand up. So please stay muted, but go ahead and kind of say hello. Great to have you guys. Howdy, all. And then again, stay muted, everybody, as much as you guys can. But then we're going to go down to San Jose, Costa Rica, and bienvenidos. Welcome to all of you guys in San Jose and in the area around San Jose. It's great to have you. And please go ahead and say hello as you can. And then we're going to go up a little bit to first Ometepe. If anybody's on from Ometepe today in Nicaragua, but then also Managua, Nicaragua, welcome to all of you guys. And as we're doing this, then I'm just going to turn to everybody. We want to welcome everyone across the world and across the United States who's here with us on Facebook. And I know what you're thinking right now. You guys are thinking that I'm forgetting San Antonio, huh? Right? But just wait, we're going to get to the Alamo City in a second. We just want to mention to everybody as you're joining us that this is the second morning of the conference. And traditionally on second mornings, people drag in. They've been up talking all night. They've been hanging around swimming pools. They've been arm wrestling. They've been in team meetings. You never know what could have been happening last night. So let's just take a second and do what you would do in a conference. You'd have to send somebody out to go knock on somebody's door to wake them up. So would you do me a favor right now and just share this event on your Facebook page or in any way you can, or if you need to text some people that you know should be on, but they're not on yet, just grab them, get them, pull them in. And that really helps us. One thing we want to challenge you to today is to go ahead and take a selfie like you did yesterday. But don't take it just of yourself alone, which would be what you do right now. Wait till the end of today's session and go ahead and grab the people that you are with as a whole. So the whole team or the whole grouping that you're together with, that still may end up being a selfie, but hey, you could always kind of like grab your cat or your dog and pull it into the picture, Joey. But go ahead and get a selfie, and then you can put the hashtag LYC CON 2021, hashtag LYC CON 2021, and then get it to us. And we'll go ahead and feature those tomorrow morning. So people are piling in. We're, again, really, really glad to have you for the second day. And all right, I know we skipped San Antonio, but we wanted to take a second this morning as we get started to highlight San Antonio, because it was 20 years ago that Boy with a Ball began in San Antonio. And it has been a wonderful 20 years that's brought us to today, to this conference, to Love Your City, and to all of you being here. We've had a good time so far celebrating. We were in San Antonio a few months ago and had some 20-year celebrations of Boy the Ball San Antonio's history. And we are going to be celebrating this week throughout the next two sessions as well. And each one of you has played such a critical part for your part of the last 20 years. So this is going to be a wonderful week together. But there's going to be an additional celebration going on across the year, including a documentary, a 20-year anniversary documentary that's being made that will release later in the year. And they're working on it right now. So here's to 20 amazing years so far, and all that God has ahead of us, all it has for us ahead together. Again, if you would do us a big favor, keep yourself muted. That really, really is helpful. And it's specifically helpful as we have different speakers come in throughout today, and we'll have a panel in just a minute. Before we get on to telling you about what will happen today, I want to go ahead and mention what we tackled yesterday. Yesterday, a lot of you, by the way, if you weren't here yesterday, you can go to the Facebook page and you have an opportunity to go ahead and listen to a recording of yesterday. Later, we'll move that over to YouTube as well. But so if you missed anything, and if you miss anything today, you'll have the chance to really get in there and to see what you missed. But yesterday, Anna Curry did a wonderful job of kicking us off, and she allowed each of Boy with the Ball's 7 teams from across Africa, Latin America, and the United States to share some of what God has done in and around them this last year. So that part was wonderful. And then Anna kicked off our theme this year, which is on you leveraging the power of Love Your City to make disciples. And we heard from Boy with the Ball Kenya, or Fakisha's Moses Aboka, who shared wonderful stories of his own experiences with discipleship. But then we also had El Niño La Bola, Costa Rica, or Boy with the Ball Costa Rica's Josue Garcia, Macho's dad. And he as well did a wonderful job of sharing some of the stories growing up around Hugo Salaya, and then some of the way that God has used he and Anita in the last few years. And then Anna shared as well from Anna's history and her story of really being dramatically impacted through discipleship, but then also getting to be involved in seeing the way that discipleship can change people's lives. So it was a great day. I had a chance then to speak on the power of, or the need to have a coach and a team and a playing field to kind of reach God's purpose for our lives. We had a quick question and answer time, and then we broke into small groups, and we'll be breaking into small groups again today. So at the end of this session will end, and it will be your next step will be to click on your small group. And so if you don't know what small group you'll be in today, contact your team leader, or if you're on Facebook Live, you can just kind of say something in the comments and Christine will grab hold of you. So you're in good hands. So excited you're here. And we're gonna have a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to begin by turning the spotlight from our teams and our volunteers who make Love Your City happen to the critical place of marketplace leaders. And we have a power-packed all-star panel who I'll introduce in just a few minutes, and who will each have a chance to share from their experiences and their insight. And we'll then have an opportunity for you all to ask questions by posting a comment, so get ready. Think of good questions, and some of the content that we'll hit today may be the first time you've considered some of these things, and some of it may be the first time you've had an opportunity to ask questions about things that you've been thinking about for a long time. So be ready. Don't be afraid to write a question down, but sooner or later, please get it in the chat box or get it out there. And then after the panel today, it is our pleasure to welcome the lead pastor of Covenant Life Church, my good friend, Chris Hyatt, who will help us dive deeper into our theme, which again is about making disciples. So today is going to be great. So we begin with the panel. A few years ago, me, Anna, Dr. Mark Woodruff, we were traveling in Silicon Valley and in San Francisco, and we were there talking to people about the power of Love Your City. And I ended up in a conversation on the back porch of a key marketplace leader who was telling me that he believed that the explosion of technology over the last years and over the next years would really eradicate poverty. And so I told the guy that I really disagreed with him. I said, even though technology is growing rapidly, excuse me, the quality of people's connectedness or their connection to relationship is almost at the same time plummeting in many areas. And I also reminded him that Jesus said that the poor you'll always have with you. So that conversation for me brings up the central point of Love Your City. We believe that poverty is not about the absence of money, but the absence of relationships, of loving one another. And there certainly is poverty in economically disadvantaged communities and neighborhoods. And I know we all work in those neighborhoods. There's certainly a poverty where maybe you don't have the language you need or the resources you need to allow your children to graduate from high school. And that can lead to a really desperate cycle. So we certainly touch that kind of poverty. But there's also a poverty in churches, if we're being honest, where we can talk forever about faith, but never really have the chance to put faith into practice, and where we never really get to the important piece of loving our neighbors that's central to our faith. And I think that churches that don't love their neighbors, they're facing a poverty. But marketplace leaders too face a poverty where life can become only about bottom lines and salaries, and it can lead to empty lives very often. And sometimes it can even lead to their businesses failing. Businesses do better when they're deeply engaged with their communities. That's just the truth. And businesses do better when they're given the opportunity to make a difference, to love their neighbors. It makes a difference in employees when the place they work does something amazing, where what they're giving most of their life to across a week is contributing to something bigger. We know every one of us, regardless of our profession, we're called to go and make disciples, but most people in the world will end up in the marketplace. So what's great about Love Your City is it provides an opportunity to engage marketplace leaders to go into their communities, but also creates a powerful space for people to give. When you're young, you have a lot of time to give, but when you're older, you don't have so much time. When you're young, you don't have that much money to give. But when you're older, money is sometimes something that can be really strategic and making a huge difference to allow others to go. So today we have a panel of marketplace leaders who have a broad range of experiences around both going and giving in connection to making a difference in their communities and even in communities across the world. So I could hear you saying, if you weren't muted, and I'm glad you're muted again, thank you so much for that. What does this have to do with making disciples? And I believe it has everything to do with making disciples. Without marketplace leaders, Love Your City simply will not last very long, dramatically lessening its chance to make disciples. Your team won't last very long without marketplace leaders. But marketplace leaders have as much need to learn to hear and respond to God's voice as volunteers and team members. And isn't that what discipleship's all about? So today, as we get ready for this panel to come up, if you are a team member, listen and learn about what you're about to hear and learn how to think through how your team can better and more deeply team with the business people around you. I think that would be a huge takeaway from today. And if you're a church, I would really challenge you to think through how your church can help maybe better support and develop marketplace leaders you have within you to turn and make a difference missionally. Thank you. Again, just as people come in, if you guys could mute. So again, if you're a church, think about how you can really help the marketplace leaders within your church to leverage their space to make a huge difference in their employees and in their communities. And finally, if you're a marketplace leader or maybe a young leader who's thinking about the business world, we hope that this will spark some exciting thoughts and ideas that will launch you into making a difference where you live. So we're going to bring up the panel in a second and I'll introduce them. But first, we have a video for you today that will help us frame our conversation of how this is happening.
As many of you know, Boy with a Ball started with a focus of helping at-risk young people. Over the years, we've learned you can't just help young people for long-term impact. You also have to get involved with their families and with communities. And then we've also learned that it's really not just the issue of a hurting community, but it's really shows that overall a city is lacking in connectedness and the way that it's all working. So Love Your City was really born out of the idea that if everyone would give what they have, what's in their hands to give, you can help your whole city thrive, and you can help every population across the city really do well. And so a great example of that is First Class Eye Care in Duluth. They just began their practice this past November, and they were really looking for a way to get involved in serving their community. So a few months ago, we had a bright young volunteer show up on a Saturday morning, which is a big part of Love Your City for us, and it's a time when everyone can come together and serve the community on a Saturday, whether it's through tutoring, getting to know families, ESL classes, small groups, other times. And so this bright young volunteer named Ellie shows up and she loves what she sees. And the following week, she was talking with the doctors of First Class Eye Care, and as they were talking about community impact and what they wanted to do, she brought up the idea of Boy with a Ball.
So I first got in contact with Boy with a Ball through volunteering one Saturday. It was the first Saturday that they came back from their winter break, and we went on a walkthrough. And from that point on, I kind of knew, like, this is something that I really want to be a part of, and an organization that really cares not only about themselves and how it makes them feel, but really cares about the community and the people in the community, and doing whatever it takes to help them.
It was one of those passion-driven organizations that we were passionate about ourselves. So we contacted them and said, hey, we'd like to do this great deed, take care of patients and provide care to them, but not only good care, but also eyeglasses and eyewear too. So this partnership has been great so far. We've gotten to meet a lot of people in the community, be able to see their expressions as we give back. They're so appreciative that, that we're able to do this kind of thing, and we consider ourselves blessed as well just to do it. So this relationship has been great. We can look forward to the continued relationship as we continue to give back to the community, and as we give back to those in need.
Dr. Young came and visited the apartment community in Norcross, met several of the families. We were all able to see together the pretty apparent need. Most of the families we talked to had never had an eye exam before, and we're very excited about the idea of glasses. One lady, she just said, things have been so blurry for so long, and I would love that. And she hasn't had insurance and hasn't had a way to do that. And so very exciting from the beginning. So over the past several months, they've been opening their clinic every week to groups of people to come in and, for most of them, get their first eye exam and first pair of glasses. The impact has been incredible, and to watch the ripple effect that's happening across the community and in these families, it's been amazing.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Mari Martínez y le quiero dar las gracias a la doctora Fea por darnos esa consulta gratis de los ojos. Le quiero agradecer mucho y darle muchas bendiciones, que Dios la bendiga por hacer eso por nosotros.
Bueno, yo le quiero dar las gracias al Dr. Young por mis lentes. Estoy muy feliz y Dios lo bendiga siempre por ayudar a la gente.
Thank you, Dr. Young, for my glasses.
Thank you, Dr. Young, for the glasses.
Gracias.
Sí, muy linda.
Gracias.
If you need eye care, I would highly recommend First Class Eye Care. They've been wonderful, amazing to work with, and then are giving back to the community. And so it's a great way to both support what they're doing and also get what you need at the same time.
That's a great story. It's been pretty dynamic to be in our community in Sarah Court where we work, and to be there on the weeks where those classes are being distributed to families. So we're going to ask you guys just each, if you'll mute your microphones, it helps us. We were going to have Dr. Young on the panel today, but there was just a scheduling conflict. He wasn't able to make it. But so our thanks to Dr. Young and to Dr. Fan, and then also to Ellie, who came as a volunteer and just so loved the experience that she ran back to her business and made the whole thing happen. And she's still a volunteer. In fact, not only is she a volunteer, but then she brought her sister, and then she brought her mom, and they were talking a lot about bringing their dad. So that's wonderful. We're going to get started with the panel and then move into the conversation. At the end of this kind of more directed conversation, we're going to give you guys a turn to also launch some questions. So you can go ahead and start firing your questions, even as the panel's occurring, through the chat panel or on Facebook Live as well. So I'll just introduce each part of the panel. First, we have Chad Jackson. Chad serves as the executive director of the Jackson Family Foundation. He has been with the foundation and in corporate philanthropy with Jackson Healthcare for 13 years. In this role, he oversees partnerships with organizations serving all over the world. Jackson Family Foundation partners with organizations who are committed to fulfilling the Great Commission, which I shared that in my message yesterday, by sharing the love of Christ globally, focusing primarily on unreached and unengaged people groups. This is done through strategic partnerships with sustainable organizations and projects like us. The foundation focuses their grants towards the following strategy areas: so healthcare and medical, at-risk youth and families, which that would include our work or the work of Love Your City, evangelism and discipleship, again, we're right there, foster and orphan care, and education, and then finally microfinance. Jackson Family Foundation has been a key funder for 4 of Boy with the Ball's local teams. They began with El Niño y la Bola Costa Rica in 2009, when they helped us to build the community center in the El Triángulo Precario, which was instrumental in an entire slum rising out of poverty. Then they then funded Boy the Ball's launch of Velocity here in Atlanta, which was its 2nd city, which was dynamic and critically important at the time. And finally, last year, they funded our efforts and the support of the 2 teams in Africa. So Chad, glad you're here. Thank you. And looking forward to what you'll have to say today. Next is Dr. Mark Woodruff, which most of you guys know pretty darn well. Mark has been the global board chair since 2012, which is a good run. And Mark has a passion for mentoring and networking young people to support them in fulfilling their destiny. He's originally from Pasadena, California, and he attended Harvard and then studied medicine at Tufts University. Mark is currently a physician at Whole Person Healthcare in Omaha, Nebraska, which is a pretty dynamic and amazing business model itself to, if you ever want to hear some interesting stories. And that's where he lives with his wife, Karen, who is also on Boy with the Ball's global board. Mark has served as the pastor emeritus for Covenant Family Church since 1992, when he helped found it. And under Mark's leadership, Boy with the Ball Global has grown from 3 local organizations to 7 local organizations. So Mark, great to have you and excited for what you'll have to say today. We're going to go on to Sam Bretzman. Sam's the owner of Bretz Media, an SEO and content strategy firm for attorneys and law firms. And Sam's story you'll hear several times across these 3 days. But as a student at Concordia University, Sam traveled to Nairobi, Kenya in 2009 and met many of the current leaders of the Fikisha Boab Kenya team. And after discovering the impact of their work in the Kawangware slum, these leaders, he agreed along with Alyssa to work together and another team of students to work together with the Kenyan leaders by forming Fikisha USA to help raise resources to expand the work in Kenya by providing scholarships for street children. It's a pretty innovative idea. And since that time, Sam, his wife Alana, and Alyssa Magnuson have worked tirelessly with churches and marketplace leaders to raise $80,000 to $100,000 a year for Boy the Ball in Kenya. Pretty powerful stuff, and looking forward to hearing from you, Sam. And then last but definitely not least is Kim Hackbarth. Kim is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. We have a really large group of Wisconsinites in this conference this year. I don't know what's happening, but I like it. She got her feet in the international travel kind of world in the cruise line industry. And then Kim and her husband, Alex, are the owners of Alma Travel Group, a travel business dedicated to providing a platform to care for people in communities and to create experiences for travelers that transform their lives, driven by purpose and passion. She is the chairman of the board for Boy the Ball's team in Costa Rica, El Niño y la Bola Costa Rica, and she formerly served on our staff there. Kim is unusually gifted a leader at connecting individuals and businesses, including multinational corporations like Intel and Western Union, with bringing about lasting change. And these talents and Kim's passion for Boy the Ball have just helped the team there complete the purchase, or be very close to completing the purchase of our new community center in the Los Cuadros slum. So good job, Kim, and welcome. So with that, here we go. We're going to get started. And so I'm going to start by asking the panelists just some more directed questions. Then we'll open it to some more general questions, and then we'll open it to you guys asking questions. Kathy just told me to smile more, so I'm going to be smiling more. Chad, could you tell us briefly about Jackson Healthcare from a business perspective? Just help us to understand kind of what you guys do. And then also why the company made the decision to not only attempt to make a difference here in Atlanta, where you guys are based, but also to be involved globally.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So Jackson Healthcare is the holding company for about 15 healthcare staffing, search, and technology companies based here in Atlanta. So the mission of Jackson Healthcare is to improve the delivery of patient care and the lives of everyone we touch. And so we try to leverage our sort of expertise in healthcare and engage our 1,500 plus associates and our network of healthcare providers to try to give back and serve as much as they can. Since we are based in Atlanta and most of our providers are in the Atlanta area or in the US, we do a lot locally through our corporate philanthropy. So we try to get them engaged in serving and using their skills in healthcare to try to give back. So we did a lot this past year with COVID. But through the foundation, we also try to make grants and invest in ministries and organizations, all over the world. And the reason for this is we started to better understand the need and that, nearly 2 billion people in the world, close to a third of the population had little or no access to the gospel. Some who had never even heard the name Jesus. And and then on top of that, learning that close to less than 1% of all Christian giving is going to these places that have little to no access to the gospel. So, we wanted to try to, we saw this imbalance and wanted to try to invest in the focus areas that Jamie mentioned to serve these people that, many who had never heard the name Jesus. So.
That's great, Chad. Just a quick second question for you with that is, do you see an impact on your employees and even on your business by your decision to kind of turn into engaging that mission?
We do, yeah. We've seen a difference in the employee, and it's been hard this past year with COVID to try to engage everyone in giving back and serving. But, fortunately through technology, we've been able to do some things virtually to engage our associates in serving. But yeah, it definitely changes the culture and impacts just the way people do business to know that through the business, they're serving others and giving back.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chad. A few years ago, when we first moved to Atlanta, we picked up a business journal, and Chad's business was named like the top large employer in Atlanta. So, sometimes you'll see little businesses turn to make this kind of a difference, but really, really dynamic to watch a business of y'all's size and impact be not only a good business, but then be great at making a difference like this. So we'll turn to Kim. Kim, and you're working in Costa Rica, both with Boy the Ball, and then Kim's worked beyond Boy the Ball. You've done a lot of connecting companies and individuals and businesses with really making a difference and in a big way, particularly with Love Your City. So I think what we'd like to ask you is, what is it that draws most people in the business world into wanting to make a difference? And what are some of the creative ways that you've actually seen that happen?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you all. So I really think that we, like Anna said, when Boy with the Ball began, it was much a movement around developing young people, but without the families and without the communities, we know we can't do that. without community engagement, we know that businesses aren't as good as they can be. But there's a really tricky thing that sometimes we treat our young people different than our businesses. And I don't think that we always need to do that. Finding, we strive to help our young people look for vision in their lives. What are their giftings? How can we help them use the lives that in their hands to make an impact and live like Jesus in this world? And we can do the same thing for businesses. So really looking at a business and seeing and understanding what are their resources, what are their giftings, and looking at them for what they are instead of looking at what we're doing. What do we need? What does our community need? What are we doing? And really understanding their heart. How do they want to give? What are their desires makes a world of difference. And a lot of businesses want to engage with organizations that they can find a place for their gifts in that. And a lot of that deep relational building is what we do on an everyday basis, connecting deeply with the community. And when there's the trust built between the business and what we're doing, they know that the connections that we have with the community are authentic. So those bridges can be built between the community and organizations. I think those authentic relationships happen over time. One great example is that we have a partnership with a communications firm called Milenio here in Costa Rica. And it's a relationship that we have grown little by little over time, and it's friendships that have built. They've given a little bit here, they've come to a few activities there, but they understand the heart of what we do and they feel a part of the family. This particular moment, we really need a communications firm to help us. As Jamie said, we're working at purchasing a community center. And so to then say, hey, this is your moment. We need you guys now because this is your gift. This is what you guys are amazing at. And this is what we need right now. So for me, it's really that, like looking at what they have and understanding those resources and really being a bridge between our work and the work that they're doing and coming together around the community.
Thanks, Kim. Kim is a great leader. And so typical of Kim, when I mentioned that she would participate in this panel, she was like, well, what if I could have a leader from Intel or a leader from this person? Or she was thinking of all those connections. But I think that, which first of all shows you why she's great. But one of the things that you see in Kim, and if you're a local team, I hope it's infectious. I hope that you can somehow catch it across your screen, is that she's not seeing this as a group of people that have money and a group of people that don't have money and how can you get it. She's seeing all of the different pieces across your city as people with resources that desperately yearn to be connected. And her faith for that and kind of the buoyancy is right. It's just right. And it's wonderful. So I'm glad you allowed us to make you agree to be on this panel. All right, we're going to go all the way out to California, and everybody be nice to Sam. It's earlier there than it is for those guys in Kenya right now, which brings me to my point as we ask you a question. Sam, you've woken up at 6 a.m. in the morning to participate in a couple of calls with Kenya a week for more than a decade. And then you've spent a great deal of your time and really at this point, your life now, connecting with churches and business people, students and families, to make it possible for the Fikisha team or the Boy the Ball Kenya team to help young people, including street boys. So that's quite a sacrifice, quite a commitment, and it's generated a lot of funds, which has helped a lot of good things happen. But here's the question: why have you done this? Why in your right mind have you done this? And what would make that kind of sacrifice worth it to you and to Alana?
Well, good morning, everybody from California. The number one thing, and I feel like this is a lame answer. It's not, but the number one thing is the Lord's calling. When He puts something on your heart in your path, when he calls you to something, you need to respond. This was something where it's almost like you couldn't not respond. I mean, you can, but you know that things will be better if you do. I think when things first started 12 years ago, it was fueled by good intentions and then the excitement and adventure of everything. Then things got hard. They got really hard. And it was just ultimately the grace of God, and with a little bit of probably sheer will, just to make sure that things didn't fall apart. And they probably would have if we didn't end up meeting you, Jamie, and Boy with the Ball. And then we met you guys, and over the years, there's been a transformation of individual growth for myself, for the team in Kenya, for Alyssa, for pretty much everybody involved. Growth as a team, deeper understanding, deeper relationships, understanding the Lord better, learning how to walk with Him, and it has turned from that initial excitement of everything when it first started to the really hard, I don't want to do this anymore, to a true joy. There's still plenty of hard parts and hiccups and things that come along, but it's really an honor to be a part of. It's one of the joys of my life. The other thing that I think about with this is Paul writes about, or uses the analogy of there are many parts but one body. 1 Corinthians 12. And he's talking about that in the spiritual gifts sense. I see that a lot in where we're called to work. Some people will be called to work in Kenya, some will in the US, some in Costa Rica, and so on. And we need to work really hard to be faithful to the things and places that we're called to be. And that way everybody gets reached. Selfishly, I would love if everybody gave all their time and all their money to Kenya. But obviously that would be not helpful to a lot of other places. So for me, when it comes down to it, I believe that Kenya is a place that the Lord has called me to be in. It's an honor to be a part of that. And hopefully that never changes.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. It's interesting to note that Sam shaved for this day. I've been around him the last few weeks and he has not been this clean shaven. It is also interesting to note that for Sam, for Kim, and for Mark, these three leaders, the things that they've been doing would be in as volunteers, really. So the taking time where you're not being compensated to turn and make a difference. So first of all, grateful for that, but also interesting. So with that, we'll turn to the third of those volunteer dynamic marketplace leaders, which is Dr. Mark Woodruff. And Mark, as we're speaking about discipleship, it goes without saying that one of the ways that the Lord disciplines us is through finances, one of the big ways. However, as a giver and as a disciple of Jesus, how have you seen the Lord disciple you and Karen into being generous? I think you're muted, Mark.
How many times did I say, make sure you unmute before you start? I love this question. I didn't have anything to do with it, choosing it, but Jamie did, and I like it. I think through a lot of opportunities to go with God on the adventure, one of the adventures of the many adventures that I'm sure he's simultaneously doing around the world, and being invited to be a part of that. You can't outgive God. That's one of the things that we have learned over and over and over again. The more you give, the more you're given responsibility for. The parable of the talents explains this principle, but it's been very, very true in our lives. I'm thinking about times when God asked us to do things financially that we couldn't have come up with on our own. So for example, there was a young couple in our church when we were very young, and God told us to give them a couple $100. And that was a lot of money for us then. It wasn't a huge sacrifice, but it was a real sacrifice. And it didn't make a lot of sense. They were doing just fine financially. But later, years later, the implications of that gift became apparent. And we would never have thought of doing that on our own. And so that's what I mean about getting invited into the adventure. That giving is a lot of fun. It's really exciting to see that you can be part of what God's doing. The other thing that I think he disciples you in is faithful in a little, faithful in much. When we were newlyweds and I was in medical school, we had next to nothing. We were living on a few $100s a month. But when you give at that point, you learn, and that's much harder. Giving a few dollars when that's your tithe is much harder than giving a lot when you have a lot. So if you can learn those lessons, I see a lot of people who start off saying, I'll give once I'm doing better financially. Well, you'll be doing better financially once you give.
That was kind of a drop the mic moment. That's great. You've never really lived until you've been on a road trip across California with Anna and Mark. And Mark takes you to all the In-N-Out burgers and tells you about the secret menu. So just to say that fundraising can be.
We lost you, Jamie.
Sorry, they muted me wisely, knowing what I was about to say next was probably completely inappropriate. No, but one thing that I think is interesting about all of this is you're seeing the power of generosity, both for businesses and for individuals, but you're also seeing the power of like giving yourself to something and getting to be a part of something, through what you heard with Sam and Kim as well. And that's in really everybody's. But so you could say, well, what's so exciting about that with Love Your City? And what Love Your City does in a lot of situations like this is it provides a sense of strategy and wisdom and impact to that. It is a really, really great place where when you're giving and you're making a difference, most of the time you're giving just because the Lord says to. But over time, God will start to pull you towards also caring about impact and doing it well. And so to have partners where the relationships are real, where the conversation is ongoing, and where both sides are seeking the Lord and working together is really critical. So again, as you are listening, would you guys please be thinking of questions and popping them in there, because we're kind of in a situation here today where as we're going through this panel, you're going to hear some great things, but you're also going to have some opportunity to really kind of respond and learn together. So we're going to stay with you, Mark. And as we're speaking about, all of this, it is making me think of something that we were talking about together as we were conceptualizing this panel. And at that time, as we were first talking about the idea of bringing together a panel like this, you mentioned some things that you wished that you had known and maybe that we had known when Boy with a Ball first began inviting people to be involved in giving to help Love Your City happen. And so what were those things so that the leaders here can gain the advantage of hearing them earlier than we did?
So I don't remember that. No, I'm just kidding. I have my notes right here. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes. Hope people will understand. And I hope that I can help you make an adjustment in your mindset. I want to ask a couple of questions. How many of you live to do fundraising? Raise your hands. What do you think of when you hear the word, fundraising? And what feelings does the word fundraising elicit? I can tell you early on, as part of the Boy with a Ball board, we spent a lot of time and energy. We brought in outside trainers dealing with how to raise money because we weren't very good at it. and we didn't like it. We were not excited about it. And the realization that eventually came, and it took a long time, we were looking for the trick, the right script, the hook, how come these people were raising all this money for an organization that wasn't nearly as good as what we were doing, and yet we were struggling to make our budget. And what I want to tell you is, it's not fundraising that's the problem. It's our issues with money and ministry. And I'll say parenthetically, I can't represent this fully right now in large measure because of time. But if you want to dive into this arena further, there's an interesting book called The Energy of Money that my wife has been teaching me about for a long time, and I'm now studying. And it's worth a read. Let me just say that. So the issue is our attitude. Most of us avoid this issue when we can, and when we can't, and I'm using notes, I hope you don't mind, we approach it like taking out the garbage. We try to make it as quick a trip as possible and just hope that we won't have a slip or a tear in the bag. Success is just getting it over as quickly as possible. I'm here to tell you we need to change our attitude. And we don't need to change our attitude like, buck up, pal, kick yourself in the fanny and get going. We need to actually open our minds to the truth, because we are believing lies, again, based on our own experience and our own issues with money and ministry. Fundraising is a ministry to the donor, and it's a ministry that they need. You are gifting them with an opportunity to make an investment with kingdom eternal returns. Now think about that. If somebody comes to you and says, I've got this stock, you've got to buy this stock, it's going to go up tenfold in the next 10 years. You would be so excited. Well, you'd probably be cynical and not believe them. But if you trusted them, you would be so excited. That's the kind of opportunity for investment that we are offering. The return on kingdom investment is way more than tenfold. You are providing that person with an opportunity to be blessed. Bob Mumford, a long time ago, told the story about traveling through the South in his VW Bug, and he was ministering in churches with dirt floors that had 20 members, and they were all poor. And he came out of one of these places and was getting into his car, and the deacon came out and pressed 2 crinkled dollars into his hand. And he said, oh, that's okay. You guys keep that and invest it back in your church. And the deacon got really mad at him. He said, you are robbing us of the opportunity to be blessed. If you don't take this gift, you are stealing our blessing. And that's what we have to realize, is that by allowing these people to invest in the kingdom with us, we are giving them the opportunity to be blessed. You're also giving them an opportunity to get involved in something special and miraculous. Boy with the Ball has phenomenal results. Amazing things happen. You've all heard the stories, you've lived the stories. Everybody wants to be a part of that. It's like the winning team in a sport. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon, or most people do. So you don't have to apologize or feel guilty for asking someone to give to your ministry. And remember, and this is should be very free, they are not your supply, God is. If they choose not to be part of God's purpose, or if they're not meant to be part of this particular ministry, then God will find someone else. So I want to encourage you to go into fundraising situations with quiet confidence in God and his ability to supply your need, to recognize that you are not begging, you are providing opportunity for these people to invest in the kingdom. And that is one of the greatest gifts you can give someone. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Quiet confidence, go with quiet confidence. And one of the things that, Mark, you said when we were talking, and thank you for today, you said that you wish we had known that when we go and we ask and somebody says no, it doesn't mean anything bad about us, and it doesn't mean anything bad about them. And
Right.
I think if you can get that out of the way, it makes you a lot more buoyant like Kim, and then we do better work. Also, as you were talking, and as many of you have been talking this morning, it's reminded me of one of those consultants that we traveled with in California. One of his assistants said to it, we said, we're just not very good at this. And she said, oh, you guys are great at this. You walk into communities all the time, all over the world, and build relationships from scratch, and then see them grow into being like life-changing relationships. So she said, you just have to do this with a new group of people. And so, so think of this as Love Your City walkthroughs in different places. But thank you very much, Mark. All right, we're going to go back to Sam. And Sam, as we've said many years ago, you took the trip to Kenya. That became the genesis of Fikisha. And that trip has been a part of changing your life and the lives of thousands of people. While Moses and Frank were present in Kenya growing the impact of the Boy the Ball team, you returned stateside, helping connect funders to the mission of what's happening abroad. As you've done this, and as you were doing this, where do you see the dynamics of Love Your City take place in reaching out to donors? And then just as you think about that, also, how does the act of giving help donors the way the act of going helps volunteers back in Kawangware?
So I love this question. And first I want to say, Mark, I thank you for sharing. I mean, everything that you said was impactful. And Kim, I want to give kudos to you as well, because I feel like most of what I'm about to say, you already said in your first little monologue there. But so this gets me really excited. Both in working with donors, if I'm looking just at fundraisers, and in working with my business relationships, the heart and the principles of Love Your City are exactly the same. And I mean, if you're going to sum it all up in one sentence, it's all about relationships. And it just like you could stop right there. Going back to the coach, team, and playing field analogy that we like to use, the donors are the playing field. Like so often in Boy with the Ball, we just talk about, not just, but we talk about going out into the communities, and that's where our playing field is. The donors are just a different version of that. Or if I'm meeting with business contacts, that's just another version of the playing field. When you walk into those situations, whether it's meeting with a donor, a potential business client, a current business client, you're looking to hear the Lord's voice and respond to it. Always looking to connect with the people, with whoever you're meeting with. If they give, that's great. If they become a partner or a client from a business sense, that's great. But that isn't the main goal. The number one goal is to connect with them and to respond to where the Lord is working. The vision is much bigger than trying to get them to be a client or to give money. It's seeing that the Lord loves them, seeing the potential in their life in the kingdom. Can they become a donor who makes new donors? Just like we look to try to build disciples who make disciples, I want to build donors who build donors. Can they do the same stuff? Can they learn to hear the Father's voice and learn to respond to that as they're walking out in their lives? Can they become a business owner whose heart gets set on fire to not only give, but to utilize their business as a force for the kingdom? And can they impact other business owners to do the same thing? I was literally on a call on Wednesday last week with a young web designer from Hawaii. I'd never met her before. And we just started talking, and she had a lot of questions just about business and getting started. And I'm not super far along in my business, but I'm a few steps further than she was. And so I was able to just share and I hopefully help her along a little bit. And throughout the process of this, Kenya came up, and then I was sharing a little bit about that. And honestly, the Lord just worked. Now, I don't believe that she's a believer, but she watched a little video I sent to her. And then she became a donor. Like, she's given $25 a month right now. It's not a whole lot, but I mean, that's cool. That was from one call from someone who we had never met before. But I know, like, the Lord is at work in that relationship, and there will be further conversations, and there will be this cool relationship probably over the course of years of seeing her and hopefully helping her to build her business. And then ideally getting to that next level where it's not just, hey, I want you to do well, or even giving, but do that. Like, you're going to have a lot of clients, and so do this for your other clients. It's all the same. It all goes back to relationship. So just like in Kawangware, we utilize programs to connect with people. It's just on-ramps into people's lives. Here, I utilize Kawangware to connect with people, or I utilize my business to connect with people. But it's all the same. It's back to relationships, and it's back to learning to hear the Father's voice and respond to it.
That's great, Sam. Very good. We are going to do 2 more directed questions. We'll first go to Chad, and then we'll go to Kim, and then we're going to kind of open it up with some general questions that anybody on the panel can step forward and share about. And we'll go as long as we have time. So first we'll go back to Chad, who we started with. Chad, for a lot of people outside of foundations, foundations can be a little hard to understand. And I know you might say that for people within foundations, they can sometimes be hard to understand. They make their decisions about how grants are awarded often behind kind of closed doors. So it's difficult for people to know what's going on there. So would you help us by peeling back the curtain a little as far as how that happens, and just answer some questions or talk a little bit about what are you guys looking for in a missional partner, and how do you guys as a group decide whether something is a worthy investment?
Yeah, so it's such a good question, and you could probably just play back what Dr. Mark said, and that would kind of sum up why we give to who we give to. But yeah, the reality is we do get several requests for grants and for partnerships, and we do have to say no a lot. We can't say yes to everyone, and so for us, the way that we choose who we potentially partner with. So I'll just read this quote. I have this quote up in my office to kind of remind me of why I come to work every day, and this quote is from Dr. David Platt, who is a pastor at McLean Bible Church, former president of the International Mission Board. And this quote is from a book that he wrote a few years ago called Radical. But the quote says this: "There are many organizations aimed at serving specific needs in the world, but people's greatest need is Christ. To meet people's temporary physical needs apart from serving their eternal spiritual needs misses the point of holistic biblical giving. If we are not careful, we will spend our resources on short-term projects that do not have long-term effects." And so, yeah, for us, we want to partner with ministries and organizations that are really taking a holistic approach and meeting both, people's physical urgent needs, but also their spiritual eternal needs. And so, there's a lot else that goes into that, geography and of course the areas of focus. We try to do that through healthcare and at-risk youth and discipleship and evangelism. But to sum it up, we really want to partner with ministries who are taking a holistic approach.
Yeah, that's great, Chad. We just in the thinking about relationship, we had Chad and his wife Carlin and their kids all out with us walking through the community on Love Your City the other day. That was wonderful. And It is interesting to note, as far as the part of relationships, is that Chad's foundation is a high impact foundation. We also, it would be impossible to have a panel like this and not mention Matt Brennan and Barnhart, who knows Chad, who's also been really very dynamic for all of us. But both relationships came through a personal connection. Matt Brennan went to a camp that we all ran years ago. And I met Chad's wife when she was a customer at a retail store that I worked at. And our staff kind of connected with her, and we were going to go watch a basketball game, I think, that she was going to be a part of. So there's just no way to divorce relationship from kingdom pieces. So thank you, Chad. So Kim, for the last question that's more directed, what for you is the secret to connecting a solid individual or business with a cause or a team that's making a meaningful impact? And then what are the ingredients that you see as critical to these kind of partnerships forming and being successful? And then if you want to give any examples, we'd love it.
I think there's so many great answers to that question coming from Chad and Sam and Mark. So this will just be one more. And in looking at this question beforehand, I really just came up with one line that businesses don't give to foundations, nonprofits. People give to people. And when with every relationship that we are cultivating and building within the business world as a team, the same as like Sam said, the coach, team, and playing field analogy, if we are looking at their coach and understanding all of the things that we've already talked about, where is their place to give? What is their ministry that the Lord has put in their heart? And work on building those personal connections. And that's really where a lot of the fruit later comes from. Like you said, Jamie, I immediately kind of looking at these questions, I was like, oh, I have the perfect person to talk about this, but I'll just tell her story instead of, she's not here with us today. But one really great example is a couple years ago, we had a little coffee and tamales end of year kind of event. It was very small within the organization. We were going to have 60 people and do this big thing, and it ended up being very small. We had maybe our team, a few key volunteers, and our board, and everybody invited a couple of people. So we ended up being a pretty small, intimate group. And at this group, there was a woman that came named Glenda. And Glenda was a friend of one of our board members. And she also, at this little coffee meeting, realized that she had gone to high school with another one of our board members. So there was a lot of really deep, long-term connection. And at the beginning, our team kind of said, we're a little disappointed that our event isn't maybe quite as big or what we expected, but who knows what the Lord is doing here. So we just have to be at peace with that. Turns out that Glenda is a very key figure in Intel here in Costa Rica. And through that coffee meeting, and though the personal relationships that she had with the two board members, as well as the relationship that she began with our team, really started to flourish, and we started spending more time with her. And through that, Glenda has really found herself as a part of our family and goes into her playing field every day and is consistently working with her team in Intel about how they are using their gifts and what they're giving to, and pushing them to seek their ministry, right? They might not call it their ministry within Intel, but she finding her place within us has really pushed that within her team. We recently, through Intel, applied for a small grant for a special project, and we didn't win. And one of her team members was so kind of captured by everything that Glenda was saying and doing and teaching within their program, that this team member personally, through their own funds, gave our organization the money for what we had requested within this program. And so all of that came from a coffee meeting, and that was personal connection more than any sort of intentional meeting with the head figures at Intel. So always just keeping in mind that it's people that are giving to people is something that in walking out gives me, like Mark says, a lot of silent confidence. We're not up against a giant just looking for a little bit of help here. No, we're all looking for our place to serve. And in doing that, I think, again, kind of to repeat some of these same things, we are giving people the opportunity, providing a place for people to serve and find their footing in the ministry that God has put in their hearts.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. And as you're saying that, one of the things that happens for us is our faith levels wane. Sometimes we see ourselves as smaller, but sometimes we start not seeing things the way they are. Like, so the Intel Corporation for many years has won the Corporate Social Responsibility Global, award, so they're the best. So we go into a meeting, instead of seeing it the way that you just described it, where it's just people meeting with people, and we go into it like, oh, this is the moment that could change everything. And if they just see me, and it's just pretty silly and probably weird for them too. So I appreciate you saying that. All right. So if you are out in the crowd and if you're on Facebook Live or you are here, this is really the moment where we're going to take some of the questions. Some of you have already posted questions. We're excited for that, and we'll get to those. But also maybe at this point, I'd really ask you to kind of think a little bit, like, what does this bring up for you? Now, for sure, some of this, and I think there's been a lot of comments online as this panel has occurred, where people are really being impacted by what's happening. So sometimes you're a little speechless. You're kind of like, whoa, this changes everything. And so I totally get that. And some of the questions that you may need to ask would be, grab a hold of a global team member or grab a hold of your team leaders in a country and have a good conversation, or a board member. So please, we do understand that some discussion will happen that way. But for a few of you, or for any of you, there could be a question that you would really like, okay, I understand that, but what about this? And so go ahead and just take a second and and throw a question out there. And we won't have time to get to every question, but I think it's a good exercise, even as far as this all demands a response from us. So, okay. So for these questions, you guys on the panel, this will take us getting used to this a little bit, but I'm just going to say a question, and then, you'll unmute yourself and you'll go ahead and answer it. And there could be some weird collisions where two people unmute at the same time, but we'll suffer it together. And I think it's really important to hear from all of you. So not everybody has to answer every question, so don't feel pressure that way, but please answer what's in your heart to answer. And by the way, if you hear something somebody else says that you just want to comment on as well, don't be afraid to do that. This can kind of be a little bit more of a dialogue. So we'd like to turn a little bit to talk about the challenges of trying to make a difference. And the question would be, what has been hard for each of you in what you've wanted to do with your generosity? And I know you may be like, yeah, I mean, the difficulties could be that there's a swing and a miss. The difficulty could be that this is the more arduous part where you really have to kind of go through it. There's a lot of ways that you can encounter difficulties. So I'll throw that out there, and then look forward to whoever wants to step in and answer.
So Jamie, the question is, what is difficult? The difficulties in giving?
Yeah, just any challenges that you guys would want to point to as far as your overcoming of it. Because I think the local teams, they all know their challenges in this, but I think coming from the other side of it, what challenges do you have when you're being generous? What challenges do you have when you're looking to give? What challenges do you have when you're looking to connect those who could give with Love Your City?
Two things that come to mind for me. One is the fear of rejection, which Mark addressed. But you want to go and ask someone to give, and then if they say no, you start to get all these doubts either about yourself or the cause or whatever. And so continually being grounded in kind of either you, Jamie, or Mark had said it, but where it's not an indictment of yourself or of the organization or anything like that. It just is, it's trusting in the Lord that He's going to place the right people at the right places and times to give. And so that's one piece. The second piece is I think that myself and probably most people don't give enough because we are concerned. I mean, again, this is going back to what Mark had said, but you cannot give the Lord. And we typically don't believe that. And so, we don't really believe it. We may say oh yeah, that's great. But when it comes down to actually writing the check or actually giving the money or whatever, how many of us have been in the situation where you've been walking down the street and a homeless person's been there asking for money, and you look in your wallet and you've got a $1 bill and a $20 bill. And it's a lot of work to pull out the 20. When in the big scheme of things for, I know there's different contexts here, but for a lot of us, it's it's not going to matter. Do the 20. It's going to be better for everybody.
Very guru-like, Sam. That was great. Hard hitting there. Anyone else want this one?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just making a note. Maybe I heard the question wrong, hopefully not, but what I think I heard, when I'm giving, there's two issues that come up immediately. One is there's so many opportunities. There's more opportunities than I can address. And there is a knee-jerk kind of reaction oh, I'll give $50, oh, I'll give $100, or I'll give $10, whatever that number is for you. It's just easier to act without thinking or praying or hearing the Holy Spirit than to do the real work of, Lord, what are you doing here? And that's what's always exciting, is doing what God is doing, not just doing something for the sake of doing it. It reminds me of Jesus saying, I didn't know you. You did all these things. Or the love chapter. If I give my body to be burned but don't have love, I'm worthless. The other practical thing that I encourage people to think about is the principle of progressive giving, so that we have a progressive tax structure. If you make $20,000, you pay a lower percentage of tax than if you make $100,000. What we've tried to do throughout our lifetime is be progressive in our giving. So it makes it a big curve if you are making more money, but you're also now giving a higher percentage, then you're giving a lot more. So, there are people who are multi-millionaires and give away 90% of what they have. They're still living very comfortably. Yeah. So
we're going to go into the next question, but I do want to make a quick disclaimer on that Mark's talking about the United States tax code. So for people living in the United States, that would be applicable. It's different in different countries. It's very interesting to watch how each of our regions are encountering philanthropy and really the need for it. It's different in each of our areas. But the truth is that each of our cultures is having to deal with and contend with through the kingdom realities that the generosity helps you. It does. So you're playing a part even in what's happening in your region, which is great. Okay, I really want to make sure we get to this question, and I think you guys will have some interesting perspectives. But think about this. Maybe you're a young professional that's watching this. You might currently be involved in a team, or you might be watching on Facebook Live, or you might download this later because some of these will turn into assets that'll be on YouTube. So what advice would you give to young professionals who are making money for the first time regarding their giving? Or also, I think one of the things that you guys could speak to really well, maybe it's a young professional who wants to go beyond career to really kind of calling, or to leverage their work life to make a difference. So there's the two sides. You're working a new job, and so you've got a little bit you could be generous with, but you're also working a job, and some of what we've heard today is that job could really be utilized for kingdom impact. What advice would you give? And just unmute yourself and jump in there.
Yeah, I'll just say something briefly. So one of the trends that we're seeing, especially with young people, is, maybe 20, 30 years ago, people, would tend to just kind of give from their heart, and give without doing a lot of research and seeing what they were impacting. And, sometimes it's good to be led by the Spirit, but, God says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. We're supposed to use our mind. And now with so many resources, with technology, the ability to network, we can really leverage all these resources to make sure that what we're giving to is impactful. And so I would just encourage young people to use your mind, use all the resources and the networks that you have available to make sure that what you're giving to is impactful. Because we all know that so many people give with good intentions, and sometimes giving, especially money, is not helpful. There's been several books on this, several articles written about just how helping hurts, or toxic charity. And so I think whether you're a foundation that has several staff members that are able to do due diligence, I think it's important. But even if you're just wanting a young professional that wants to give $20 or $100, I think it's important to make sure that that what you're giving to is really making an impact.
That's great, Chad. Thank you. Other panelists? Come on, Kim, you want to get in there, or did you just unmute?
I'll just say something real quick. One thing that was coming to mind was team and community. You can have a much bigger impact. There's two things. To what Chad was saying, you have more people involved, you can get some different perspectives on, hey, is this the best thing to be doing? Is this the cause or organizations you want to be giving to? But also, it's a lot more fun, and you have a bigger impact if you're doing things together. And so that's just one. Don't go it alone. It's one thought.
It's great. Anything from you, Kim?
Yeah, I guess I'm on the same page as Sam. Really, the idea of not going it alone. And as a young person, I think it's exciting to be in this place, and it's hard sometimes to find someone that has the wisdom and the experience around giving. As someone that's starting your philanthropic or economic ministry at a young age, there's so much opportunity. And so getting with other people or an organization that you can walk alongside with, I think is key.
Well, that is great. I really appreciate you guys today turning to engage this panel the way you've done. I would summarize one last thing just to say is that if you are a marketplace leader, I think we're just starting to tap into some of the real creative and powerful things that can happen. I think we turn the world into a strange spot when there are these groups that's their job to go make a difference, and then there are these groups that's their job to go work. And I think it's so much bigger than that. We've seen on our teams that some people are better at doing data entry, and some people are better at, connecting with the hardest to reach person in a neighborhood, and you need both of those. And I think we just have to see that it's a larger team, it's a larger group. And if you're a local team that hasn't engaged marketplace leaders, you're missing something. Jesus certainly did, and Paul himself was a marketplace, I don't know for sure leader, but he was definitely a marketplace guy. So please do that. But if you're a marketplace leader, our real hope is that to be able to cultivate here in the conference, and specifically as we also have a live version of it where we're back in person, where we're kind of cultivating these kind of conversations and looking for the kind of synergies you saw at the very beginning with First Class Eye Care and the video with Dr. Fan and Dr. Young. So really, really appreciate you guys on the board. Again, Dr. Woodruff and Karen, they are a huge part of all of our lives as global team members. You'll see them in your countries at times. They're a part of the conference every year, and you can see why they are so important to everybody. Sam is really critical. Think about it. If you're Kenya, you get to meet with Sam twice a week. But also, if you're looking for search engine optimization, you saw that. So please don't be afraid to reach out to Sam. Kim, honestly, has the coolest house in the world. It's right in Costa Rica, has a bunch of rooms, bunch of beds, really cool dining hall where so elegant, great place to take a whole family, Chad, to just go and experience Costa Rica. And she does such a good job of really helping groups take what's a trip to turn it into kind of a transformational experience. And so, and also is working really hard in her role as the board chair. And then Chad, I think on behalf of all of our teams and all of us, this is one opportunity where you get to have all of us here just to say thank you. Thank you for who you are and what you've done. And thank you to your family for coming the other day, and look forward to good discussions in the future. And hopefully you getting to be around these people more in person as well. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. All right. You can keep shouting little thanks and your appreciation in the little chat part, and we'll get those on to them. But we're so appreciative. What a great panel, right? Some of those thoughts and some of the things that have to be going through your heart and mind are really great. And I would challenge each of the local teams that are involved in implementing Love Your City to bring this up as a topic as you're debriefing. Maybe gather around and kind of say, hey, what did you think about? What did you think about? Maybe some of you that are like, I didn't think about anything, but you may have like 5 or 6 of your other team members who said, I was thinking about so much. And so that was really, really awesome. What a great experience. And it's kind of a fun day because we turn from that, which I think is some of the beauty of Love Your City. We are saying it's not just about going, but it's about giving. And we're saying it's about a whole city, a whole community joining together to do what alone we couldn't do. So excited for just that concept. And that's exciting. But now the next part of this is as we shift back we shift a little bit of track toward the theme of making disciples. And the next task that I have right now is to introduce my best friend. So I am not going to give any of our story because Chris Hyatt, Pastor Chris Hyatt, he may give some of that story, but I'm just going to give you some better than stories, some sense of who Chris Hyatt is. Chris and Donna Hyatt are the first couple that I ever met coming out of a very difficult background where I grew up atheist. They were the first couple I ever met that the way that they loved Jesus and the way they loved each other and the way they loved young people, it gave me a vision of what life could be. And I used to feel like when I would stay in their house as a teenager, that it was like the air felt like it was made of candy. And I would cry as I would drive back to Orlando, Florida, the 10 hours to get home from being at their house. Chris is a leader who, as a very young person, was always a leader. First is in Boy Scouts, which is a really powerful nonprofit focused on the development of young leaders. And he got in Boy Scouts, if you know anything about Boy Scouts, he got all the way up to the point of being an Eagle Scout, which is kind of a big deal. There have been presidents of the United States who were Eagle Scouts. Like it's not nothing. That's something to achieve as a young person. But he learned a lot of leadership of young people there. And as he tells his story, what you just watched is that along the way, God kept giving Chris vision for the fact that young people could be reached, should be reached, and if they were reached, it would change everything. And that's a really cool macro story. Chris started Camp of Champions, which for so many people that have been involved in Boy with the Ball was a key platform for us, either getting to Jesus or really growing in our gifts. But even beyond that, Chris's individual ability to look you in the eyes and to smile at you and to just love you, it's life-changing. And I think even for you guys in Kenya, you've experienced that. I know for all the leaders who have visited here, you've experienced that. And for all of us here that get to work with him every day. But one of the most exciting things I'd say about Chris is what's happening now is that Chris has been very visionary about his leadership of a local church, an amazing local church, a historic local church that really knew that they needed to step out into engaging the community. And he's really been in a moment where maybe some of the more recent models for churches struggle with that and are struggling to make that turn. But Chris has kind of been willing to lay down former models and to just totally engage the idea of how do we as a church build who we are around God's mission. And what he's done is so allowed the church here to partner with the Boy with the Ball team here, that some of the fusion and the synergy that you heard about for businesses, we've seen right here with churches. And I think in the future, in the next few years with this conference, we'll be focusing on trying to help churches as well, kind of reconceptualize how they can engage, including helping their marketplace leaders engage, things like Love Your City. But Chris's work in that, it's ongoing. It's a constant adventure. And it has changed my life to know Chris, that it is changing my life to get to walk with him into this adventure. Chris was the best man at my wedding. Chris, I would say if it weren't for Chris, I think Kathy would say this, Kathy and I would not only probably not be married, but we could very well be dead. So I don't know how to better commend a leader to you. And most of you, because of the place that Chris has in Boy with the Ball and in Love Your City, most of you already know Chris, but I introduce him full-heartedly. The final thing I'd say about Chris as he gets ready to come and share is that one of the things Chris did this last semester is allowed himself to be a volunteer in one of the most difficult velocity implementations we've ever done in Atlanta. And he allowed himself to be a small group leader of one of the more difficult small groups that any person in human history has ever led or coordinated. And I like that about Chris. Like, he's going to be a powerful communicator as he comes this morning, but he's somebody who's right there in the work with you. And I think we can really receive him as he comes. So take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Jamie. Wow. I love you, and I love Boy with the Ball, and it is such a privilege to be with you this morning. This whole conference already has really blessed me. When I was 17 years old, and that was 39 years ago now, my dad helped me load up all my belongings in a little small pickup truck that I owned and a rented trailer. And I moved from my little hometown of Roswell, New Mexico. For those of you not familiar with the United States, that's in the southwestern part of our country. And move 1,100 miles away to the Gulf Coast, to a city called Mobile, Alabama. It was in the deep South, and I can promise you, it was a culture shock on so many levels. But I strongly believed God was calling me there. And as I got there, I enrolled at the University of South Alabama. But I want you to understand, I didn't move clear across country to go to South Alabama. There were plenty of universities much closer to home. So I moved to Mobile because something else was there for me. It was a dynamic group of leaders and followers of